locations. We don't say Bible is like the Quran, eternal word of Allah. We do not say dot by dot, letter by letter, sound by sound. The Bible is exactly the same what it was given to Jesus.
Okay,
because there is nothing given to the Jesus. Jesus is the eternal word of God, gave himself to us.
So nobody believes, I hope no one here believes, that the Bible is eternal. Please don't say that.
We do believe Lord Jesus Christ eternal, who gave himself for us.
But is the Bible eternal? No. So that's the first claim. We do not make that claim that the Muslims are claiming. Can you see? We make two different claims. Secondly, the Muslims claim that the Quran was sent down over a 22-year period to a man named Muhammad between 610 and 632. Would we say the Bible was sent down to anybody? No. Men wrote it using their own hands, using their own ability, put their names, many of them put their names to the books they wrote. Am I correct?
But we do say the eternal word of Yahweh, Lord Jesus Christ, was sent down.
Okay, so do you see what she's doing? Every one of these claims, there is a response, but it's not the Bible, it's Jesus Christ. Because Jesus is eternal. The Quran is not eternal. We're going to prove that today. Jesus was sent down. We're going to show that the Quran was not sent down. Now, the Muslims claim that it was complete at the time of Uthman, 652. Would we say that the Bible was complete when it was first written down? And we would say yes, absolutely. On that point, we would claim.
New Testament is completed in 90 AD, which is approximately 60 years after the death of Lord Jesus Christ. Bible cannot be completed at the lifetime of Jesus, because Bible gives us, especially the New Testament, the life of Jesus, his life, his death, and how the church started. So we do not have the same criteria with the Muslims when it comes to that.
Now, I hope you're all listening as to why we do not make those claims. Now, the Muslims say, and this is hugely important, that the Quran they have in their hands today is exactly the same. You've heard that already. We've been quoting their scholars. This book here is exactly the same. That's the Arabic part of it, as that which was sent down to Muhammad, that which was compiled by Uthman, that which exists on those eternal tablets that are in heaven, according Muslim now says today. Every Muslim should be saying today. They are starting to change their tune now, aren't they, Hutun? And why are they starting to change their tune?
Because first of all, they cannot find this perfect, unchanged Quran from the time of Muhammad. They cannot find unchanged and perfect Quran from the time of Abu Bakr, as well as they cannot find the perfect, unchanged Quran from the time of Uthman.
When was the first Quran that existed that we have today?
Hold on to that. Hold on to that. In about 2 hours, we're going to answer that. You got to stay here to 2 hours to get that answer. But before we do that, we need to say, what is it that Islam says? How did the Quran begin according to Islam? And to do that, you need to go to Al-Bukhari. You need to go to volume 6, hadith number 509 and 510. Have you all read it? Well, here it is right here. You can read it right now. It's in Arabic, and it's also in English. Let's summarize what it says, okay, to help them out.
Yep.
Now, according to what Al-Bukhari says, now, before we start, when did Al-Bukhari write this down? Anybody know the dates?
He died in 817.
870.
That's
so he would have written it between
years.
850 and 870, 20 years before he died.
So that makes approximately 250 years after the death of Muhammad. 250 years, that's quite long time.
Actually, it's about 270 years, but that's fine. Now let's go
So
back.
if you write down 850.
850 to 870, okay. Now let's go ahead and see what he says. In 509, he says that when Muhammad died, the Quran still had not been written down. It was not written in a codified form. There was no Quranic codex at all.
We don't know why.
That's a good question. Why did he not write it down? What was his one responsibility?
To deliver prophecy.
To receive the Quran and have it written down, right? Muslims will say the reason he did not write it down is because he could not read and write.
We had a scribe.
He had scribes who were able to read and write.
Zaid Ibn Thabit was his secretary.
Surely he could read and write.
What does Zaid Ibn Thabit do? What does a secretary do?
Typing,
Write down
typing,
what the
typing.
master says, right? Zaid Ibn Thabit had 22 years to write it down. Why didn't he write it down? Come on, Muslims, you've got to come up with a response to this.
Or other question is, Jay, he was a prophet for 20 years. He was a prophet, man of God for 20 years, and Allah trusted him and gave his word. He could learn how to write. What did he do? For whole 20 years, he couldn't able to learn how to write down things. That says a lot about his knowledge, Jay.
How many letters are there in Arabic?
28.
28 letters.
He was a merchant.
28 letters, that's all it takes. Hold this a minute, I'll show you. If you look at the letters, you will see there are not many of them. When you look at the letters, you will see you can learn these letters. I learned them in 2 weeks. That's all it takes.
And Muhammad couldn't learn in 22 years.
There are only 6 letters that what we call letters that are unique, that don't need any dots. The other 22 letters need dots to know what the letters are. But that's 28 letters complete. Could he not learn these letters in certainly 22 years? He already knew Arabic. Can you see why we're asking these questions? Now, it was not written down during his lifetime. Abu Bakr then writes it down, according to Sahih Bukhari. He writes it down in 632 to 634.
It's not he writes down. People come to him and then urge him to write the word of Allah down. Otherwise, as people die in the Battle of Yamama, they are losing the Quran. Let's write it down so that we don't lose the Quran. You're finished.
Where is Abu Bakr?
So here you have the first Quran written down. All right? We have the first Quran written down at the time of Abu Bakr between 632 and 634.
Where is it?
Are you following that?
Where is it?
That's the first recension. What happened to that Quran?
So that Quran was passed to Umar, who was the second caliph. From Umar, it passed to the daughter of Umar, Hafsah. And Uthman takes place around 648 to 656. In 652, Muslim comes to Uthman and then says, no.
Okay, now we're on hadith number, volume 6, hadith number 510. We're now in the next hadith. We've now moved 20 years later. We're in 652, and Uthman is in power. He is the third caliph. What happens with Uthman?
So people come to Uthman and then express that now there are differences in the Quran, that they don't want Muslim nation to divide. So what do we do now? We need to make one perfect Quran.
Hold on a minute. How could there be differences in the Quran if it's perfect, if it's guarded by God, if it's the final revelation? How could there be differences in the Quran?
That's we call miracle of Islam.
Just go back to Abu Bakr.
Can you see? Allah could not even preserve the Quran for 20 years. What kind of God can't even preserve the Quran for 20 years? We're only 20 years later. We're only 20 years later, and already there are corruptions in the Quran. There are many different Qurans. So Uthman now goes to Zaid Ibn Thabit. You're right in front of the camera. Move over to the left. He goes right to Zaid Ibn Thabit, who is the secretary of Muhammad, and he asks him to get Hafsah's text. And then what does he do?
So they get the Hafsah's text by the same person who wrote the first Quran down for the Abu Bakr. They get the Quran and then they go and search for it, and then they put together one another perfect Quran.
Hold on, before they do that, they ask the question.
They did not copy from what it was written down. They put together one perfect Quran as a second Quran.
And how do you know that it was different than the first one?
All right, people are complaining about it, as well as Uthman says, if you disagree in anything, Write in this dialect.
Not in anything. If you degree in a dialect, if you have a dialectic difference, you must write it in the Quranic dialect. Now, who reads and writes Arabic here? Does anybody read and write Arabic? Come forward, please.
Why would you need a second?
I'd like to ask you a question.
She wants to. She
Okay,
prefers to.
I'm going to ask you and see if you agree. In order to read a dialectic difference in the Arabic script, you need vowelization, don't you? You need the dhamma, the kasra, and the fatha. Am I correct? Okay, exactly. But today, when you see a dialectic difference between Jordan or Egypt or Morocco, how you read it depends on where you put the vowels. The U, the E, and the A sound. Okay, when you read Arabic script, how do you change the dialects in the script? Okay, let's use the word kitab, book. If you say kitab or kutab, it's two different words, right? What has changed between kitab and kutab or kitaba? I know, but what has changed? You're not answering a question. What has changed? The vowels have changed. Were there any vowels in the 7th century? No, there weren't.
Can you come forward and read this for me without any dots, please? Here's the example for you. If you are able to recognize
you can read that without any vowels.
without the dots, can you please read it?
So you have to add the dots. You have to add the vowels.
So you put the vowels there for everyone to be able to read exactly the same way. Okay? So, no. Ma'am, hold on a minute. Ma'am, hold on a minute.
Go ahead. Say it again. I can't hear you. You really need to come forward.
Structure?
Do you know the date for Othmanic?
690.
685 to 705. Were there any vowels or diacritical marks at the time of Othmanic?
Yes.
No, there weren't.
Yes, there were.
Can you show me one manuscript that has vowels in it?
So, ma'am?
Ma'am, show me one manuscript from the time of Othmanic that had any vowels.
Just a moment, Jay.
The Sana manuscript is 705. The Sana manuscript has no vowels.
Jay, just a
We will
moment.
show you the Sana manuscript right now.
Just a moment, Jay. Ma'am, in here, I have the examples from
That's
late
Sana
8th
right there.
century. Just a moment, Jay. In here, I have the examples from the late 8th century. Those are the manuscripts. Can you show me the vowels on those manuscripts?
Here's the Sana manuscript. Do you see any vowels there?
Yeah, that shows the consonantal letter has been edited. In here, here's another examples, ma'am. Can you able to show us the vowels? Sorry, question is very simple. In here, there are two examples. Are you able to show me the vowels on those manuscripts? You said for everyone to be
Are you a
able
native
to.
Arab speaker? You're not a native Arab speaker. Ask any native Arab speakers if they need the vowels or the dots. Here's the problem. There were no dots in any of these.
You don't have to ask an Arab speaker from now. Any Arab speaker from this, you have one Hafiz from this time.
Okay. I want you to read it if you don't have any. Since there's no dots and no vowels, why do we need it? You read it then.
Why do you need to be Hafiz to read the Arabic? There are the people who live in Arabic countries, they read and write in Arabic, they are not Hafiz. Why do you need to be Hafiz to just read the Arabic? I'm not asking you to recite it for me.
I would ask two things. I'm coming from German, and if you ask anybody now to read the German text from, let's say, 1500, you will not be able.
That's not my question. That's not my question.
Arabic is nothing like German. There's a German. German has vowels built into the text. You have Germans. I'm sorry, you have German. You have consonants and vowels in the German script, right? Arabic had no vowels in it when it was created.
Let alone the dots, consonantal dots.
And that's why most people are not aware of this problem. I understand that you're not talking about these scripts, but you can't read it. No Arab can read it. You're an Arab speaker. Are you an Arab speaker?
Yes.
Can you read that?
No way.
You need to have the dots, right?
Yes.
So when were the dots introduced? They were introduced. All of them were introduced after Abdul Malik.
Exactly like you want to speak English, you put dot on English and you want to read it as English, you can't make it.
No, don't worry about English. English already has vowels in it. Like
Yeah.
German, we
Yeah, you
already
put
have the
dots
vowels
on it,
there.
you can't read it.
You can't compare German with Arabic. Like you can't compare English with Arabic. Because the English script has consonants and vowels in place. The Arabic script, when it was first written, in these manuscripts, had no dots, had no vowels, and that's why they needed to put the dots in. That's why you have a problem with ahruf and kida. Now let's explain ahruf and kida.
Just a moment. Also, for us to be able to read these manuscripts, we need consonantal dots as well, not only the vowels. What was your question?
So here we go. When were these introduced? When were the diacritical marks? And when were the vowelizations introduced?
Oh, well, we look at the 8th century manuscripts and we see it start processing. 9th century manuscripts, still it has been processing.
So they were not canonized even in the 9th century. They were still being introduced. There was many disagreements.
A process going on.
It's a process going on. Now this is where many Muslims get this confused. That's why we're going to go slow with this. For those Muslims who are watching and those who are listening, remember, the diacritical marks did not exist in these earliest manuscripts. There are no dots in any of these. There are no dots in these. That's why dots needed to be introduced. They needed to be invented. If you just take one smiley face, you can put 5 different dots and they give you 5 different letters.
Let me give you a
one
better
dot
example.
above makes a na. 2 dots above makes a ta. 3 dots above makes a tha. 1 dot below makes a ba. 2 dots below makes a ya. Na, ta, tha, ba, ya. Could be 5 different letters.
Let me give
But
different
before
examples.
those dots were there, nobody knew which letter it was. So when she says we don't need the dots, she obviously cannot read Arabic. Because she could not read this Arabic when we asked her.
Let me give another example. The word katala, which means kill in Arabic, it can be without dots. You can just change the place of the dots, and then it can be elephant. It can be meat. It can be fight, or it can be killed.
Kutila.
Yeah, just one.
But those are
consonant.
vowelizations. Those are vowelizations.
Yeah, but like from that, just those dots are changing the word from the fight to kill to elephant to meat. See how important it is?
We're going to show you an example of this right now. Because this is why you need to, let's go to the one where the katala and the kutila is. When you look at these dots, here you go.
346.
If you look here it says katala.
Ma'am,
means
this might be helpful for you.
But when you change the vowels like it does in the words, it becomes kutila. That means killed. Now, were the prophets, did they fight or were the prophets killed? If I'm a prophet, I would rather fight than be killed, right? There's a huge difference depending on where you put the vowels. So when she says we don't need the vowels and you can read it any way you want, no, you cannot. That's why, folks, they had to have the diacritical marks. They had to invent the vowels. Otherwise, you could pretty much say anything you want for any verse. Because of that, folks, there were many different derivations, many different schools. How many schools do we know of?
Let's just go back to the Quran of Uthman. That's where we stopped.
You want to go back again?
No, that's
Before
where we
we
stopped.
get into this, let's go back to...
So, when Uthman was told to make one perfect Quran, people were calling one another kafir. It is because of the different recitation of the Quran. So, those differences were very important, was making other Muslim to be non-Muslim, to be called non-Muslim. Therefore, Uthman asked Zaid Ibn Thabit to make one perfect Quran. From 650s, that one perfect Quran has been made, and whatever was written down before that, which is including the Quran of Hafsah, were burned.
It's right here, folks. You can see it right there. When they made this final copy, Zaid Ibn Thabit, along with Alas, Zubair, and Hisham, so 4 of them were given the responsibility. Uthman then took all the other copies that disagreed. Now remember, if they disagreed, these are not diacritical differences. These are not vowelizations. There are no vowels. There are no dots in 652. That's why the Germans didn't understand this. She said it's the same in German. No, it's not the same in German. This is completely different in Arabic. So if they disagreed, that means they had to disagree in the Ruzam, in the consonantal text. That means they completely disagreed. What did Uthman do with those that disagreed? He burned them. Why do you burn manuscripts?
I guess Islam is the only ideology out there who burned their holy book, versus Christians were burned and given to the lions because of their holy books. See the differences? They burned their own writings.
Okay. Now, once they had burned all of the other manuscripts, they had one manuscript which is the final text.
Yeah.
This is the final canon.
They copied that, made 9 of them, and then those 9 went to 9 different cities with someone who memorized it very well.
Here are the 9 cities. Look at them. Basra, Baghdad, Damascus, Jerusalem, Cairo, Alexandria, Aden, Herat, and Nishapur. Did you count 9? There they all are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 cities had 9 copies of the Quran. That was in 652. That's only 1,400 years ago.
Your Islamic tradition tells us.
Don't you love this guy? We're quoting his own material, and he's asked, how do I know? We're quoting Al-Bukhari, your own hadith compiler. I don't know, I wasn't there. But was Al-Bukhari there?
No.
Was Al-Bukhari there?
No.
When did Al-Bukhari die?
870.
When did this happen? 652. Do your own maths.
Was Muhammad even not there when that happened? Muhammad wasn't there when Uthman burned all the Qurans. Muhammad wasn't there when those Qurans have been sent to 9 different cities because he was long dead.
Okay, folks, that means they should have 9 Qurans today. Am I correct?
9 perfect Quran, Surah 1 to Surah 114.
We want Muslims to show us those 9 Qurans. Where are the 9 Qurans? Where are they? Don't you love that passion? Don't you love that passion? Bye-bye, and he walks off. Can you see why he's upset? Because we're questioning everything he believes. Without the Quran being sacrosanct, without the Quran being perfect, if the Quran has any hint of human intervention, you then can no longer depend on the Quran from God. For the Muslim, it has to be the eternal Quran. For the Muslim, every dot, every letter, every word, every verse has to exactly be the same. So when we are asking these questions, no wonder he gets upset. I would be upset if I was a Muslim and hearing this. But we're not saying anything that Al-Bukhari hadn't already said. We're just reading Al-Bukhari.
So Islamic tradition makes Muslims to walk away from their own Quran.
From their own Quran, from their own arguments. Now, so where are those 9 Qurans? Muslims cannot come up with even one of them. There's no Quran from the 7th century.